Hey everybody, how are you all doing? It's been a kind of absurd month, and I am happy to report back to you that it's been a successful month too for the DXC network and frankly the animal rights movement. But gosh, I don't think more has happened in 1 month in the animal rights movement's history, and it's not even really including the work on the fur ban. But you know, some of the things that happened last month are the first mass open rescue in Mexico City. Our chapter in Mexico City occupied a slaughterhouse for the first time in a place where it is incredibly dangerous. I mean, we're not talking about the United States where you have, the Fifth Amendment and the rule of law and professionalized police. This is a place in a nation where police routinely are so corrupt that they act as de facto assassins for corporate gang. Um, Most notoriously in the drug industry, but frankly, any big business. They can bribe someone, they have the power to just have you killed. And our activists went out there, did an amazing peaceful protest and rescued, I think it was 4 or 5 lives. So other things that happened this month, and I'm gonna just message Brad real quick because he just sent me a call. Call in here, Brad. And if it doesn't work out, I might just have him call in via the phone. But other things that happened this month, the Australian protests really escalated. And many of you know that there were mass protests in Australia against factory farms and slaughterhouses, street blockades in big cities like Melbourne. And the consequence was dozens of activists facing some sort of legal charges. But the most serious charge was against one of our organizers in Western Australia, whose name is James Warden. And the charges against James arose out of his rescue of a calf from a veal farm, whose name was Theo. And unfortunately, in the context of his arrest, they also raided the sanctuary. And there's some lessons we can learn from that, notably the importance of security culture. But it was impressive enough, the protest, that the Premier of Western Australia, one of the 3 or 4 most powerful politicians in the entire nation, was actually asked about it by a television reporter and had to answer on the spot. What do you think about Theo? Brad is saying the meeting ID does not exist. I wonder if I have the right meeting ID. Sahar, I'm gonna send you the meeting ID number. And if you could just tell me if you think this is the right one.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Because Brad Johnson, a Smithfield pig farmer, an ex-Smithfield pig farmer, I should say, should be joining. And then there was some incredible breaking news that I'm not going to talk in too much detail about in Canada. Actually, 2 breaking events. One is an occupation of a pig farm in Vancouver, which led to, I think, something like 100 activists being cited and 1 activist being arrested. And that got major television attention in Western Canada. That was not a DXC action, but many DXC organizers participated in it. It was a coalitional action involving many grassroots activists. And finally, something that many of you probably didn't hear at all that we're going to break on Tuesday with a video is probably a lot of you have heard about Jenny McQueen's case. Jenny McQueen is a former civil servant who's retired now, a woman in Ontario, Canada, who was sick and tired of seeing all this footage of animal abuse around the world and decided she wanted to take a risk and walk into a pig farm herself and find out how things looked in Canada, because Canadians like to think that they're so different than the United States, that all this factory farm footage from the United States is not representative of the Canadian industry. There is some weird beeping happening at the Berkeley Animal Rights Center. Let's hope that's not a bug by the FBI. But on the other hand, if the FBI is listening, that's okay, because we're proud of everything we do, right? Just kidding. Not just kidding about being proud of everything we do, just kidding about a bug being in the Berkeley Animal Rights Center. But in Jenny McQueen's case, she had gone into a pig farm and she saw some of these pigs, because of serial, forcible impregnation and serial pregnancy that happens on, basically a 9 to 10 month cycle. They're constantly impregnated and forced to give birth, impregnated again. But they have, basically 2 litters every month, that their internal organs, their uterus and their vagina, is literally coming inside out, and it's getting torn up and bleeding and rotting. So these poor animals have their internal organs outside of their bodies. You can see this massive clump of just flesh coming out of her backside. And this is horrifying cruelty. And we had veterinarians and lawyers review this and say, this is clearly criminal. This is not acceptable conduct to just leave an animal languishing inside a gestation or faring great in this condition. Jenny followed the appropriate procedures to report this to the authorities. And okay, Sahar is telling me to give him another number. Okay. So she followed the appropriate procedures to report this to the authorities, but instead of investigating the pig farm or taking any action whatsoever relating to the pig farm, they surprised her one morning and showed up at her doorstep and raided her home. And they took everything. They took her phone, they took her computers. I think they even took like her iPod, anything, any electronic device. They probably took her hairdryer for all I know. I don't know what they took, but they took everything from her and, paraded her outside of her neighborhood, like had her detained outside while they raided her home, took all her stuff away, and then arrested her, charged her with multiple counts of larceny. And there are no felonies and misdemeanors in Canada, but the charges were equivalent to a felony in the United States. But well, there's really good news coming out on Tuesday about this, and I can't say exactly what, but I will say Jenny's case has taken an unexpected turn for the better. And stay tuned on Tuesday to find out more, or you can ask Jenny yourself. But don't share anything about it yet, because we want to have one big push on social media, one big push in the media for that to come out. So don't share anything on social media quite yet. So all that happened, and then in the wake of all that, we've got this just incredibly miraculous story of an ex-pig farmer named Bradley Johnson, who I've struck up a relationship over the past few months, who you're seeing all these animal rights activists rising, and you're seeing publications like the New York Times and Guardian calling us vegan extremists. And I think the Prime Minister of Australia called us green-collared criminals. There's white-collared criminals who are financial criminals, and then there's green-collared criminals who can't stop themselves from committing environmental crimes in defense of environmental and animal rights extremism, which is pretty funny. And I think one of the most important notes to make about Brad's, and I think Brad is still not on. I'm just going to call Brad in, because I want Brad to hear this, because I just want to get his take on this when I'm done. I'm trying to call him. All right. Sorry, everybody. Brad is not the most technologically sophisticated, so, Zoom calls can. Hey, Bradley, how are you?
All right.
Hey, I got you on the call. I'm going to have you on the call by my phone if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I'm just actually.
Do what?
You go ahead.
Oh yeah, I said that number was not existent.
Not existing. Okay, no worries. I think people can probably hear you via my phone. Can you all hear Brad? It's probably a little soft. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear it.
They nodded. So I was just about to tell your story. I was telling folks about all the amazing things that have been happening around the JXE network. And now I'm going to just tell probably the most surprising and miraculous story of them all from this month, which is that, Brad is kind of really turning around and starting to come after the large corporations that abuse animals instead of working for them. And I'm happy to say that I think that Brad's days in hog farming are over. And my hope is his adventure into veganism and animal rights is just beginning. He ate vegan food his entire trip here, and I think he enjoyed it and thought it was delicious. And one of the really cool things that happened is we had a journalist with us. I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is just such an exciting detail, such a funny detail. I feel like I want to share it now that it's on my mind. When Brad was out here, one of the really cool things is we had this journalist out here who's written about the Standing Rock movement for the New York Times. He's written about us and The Intercept. He's, one of the nation's finest journalists, especially relating to activism and social movements. And he was telling me, I care about animals and I care about the environment, but it always just seemed like too much of an inconvenience and too much to go even vegetarian. He was like, I try, I eat my grass-fed beef, my cage-free eggs. And this is someone who's written about grass-fed beef and cage-free eggs with us. And he's written about the humane lie, and yet he's still eating meat because he just thinks, no, it's just too hard. And he doesn't really have any vegans or vegetarians in his network. He lives in Georgia, so he's not surrounded by a big vegan community. But this guy, Saul Elbine, is sitting with us in the Butcher Shop, right, in Berkeley, which is a vegan butcher shop. It's the butcher's son, right? The butcher killed animals. The butcher's son is no longer killing animals. He's saving animals and serving people plant-based meats. We're sitting together having, like a pesto chicken sandwich. I think Brad and Saul both have the same sandwich. They both get a chicken parmesan, which is completely vegan, right? And Brad is just scarfing down his sandwich and saying, wow, this is the best food I ever had in my life. Brad, do you remember this? And Saul basically says, man, I've got no excuses. If an ex-pig farmer in North Carolina loves vegan food, who am I to not go vegan or vegetarian? Do you remember this, Brad, when Saul was saying that?
Definitely.
That was pretty funny, wasn't it? Yeah. So I think Saul basically from that point, this is like, I think on Monday, just this past Monday, and Saul started hanging out with us on Sunday, and he was with us through Thursday. The rest of that trip, even when he wasn't with us, he was eating vegan. Like he was asking, all right, where's the next vegan restaurant? He kept messaging me saying, where should I go next? Where should I go next? And I was telling him, go to Ike's and get, the Christina, which is a vegan chicken sandwich at Ike's, a sandwich shop in California. I told him, go to Shenzhen and have some sushi. And, I actually haven't checked in with him. I'm going to find out if he's continuing to be vegan throughout the entire trip. But really, that's only the tip of the iceberg. We don't just want people to go vegan. We want them to transform the animal rights activists. And that is where Brad's story is most powerful. So I'm getting ahead of myself again. And I know I have a lot of time, and I want to get Brad's take on some of this stuff. But I did want to just briefly share Brad's story. Brad's story is powerful because Brad was steeped in the industry. And before he met us, had never met a vegetarian, had never met a vegan, probably never even heard of the animal rights movement. Brad, did you know what PETA was before you met us? Had you heard of PETA? Okay,
I did not. I knew more about animal rights than I did PETA, which wasn't a whole lot.
So yeah, he didn't even know about PETA, which tells you, I mean, everybody knows PETA, right? So, but Brad's sitting here at a pig farm and being forced to kill pigs over and over again. And this is a guy who has no exposure, no education in animal rights beyond just his own common sense intuitions. And he's telling himself, I don't like killing piglets. It's just, it's a gruesome, disturbing business. And in particular, I don't like thumping them. This horrible practice where they take the fall behind piglets, grab them by their hind legs, lift them over their heads, and just crash their skulls against the ground. And Brad has shared stories with us about, how horrible it was when you don't hit them hard enough. When you don't hit them hard enough and they're still alive after the first thumping, that's when it's worse, because they could wake up again, and who knows, they could wake up in a landfill or a dumpster and just slowly starve to it. It's a horrible way to die. And Brad was sick of doing this and finally got to the point where he said, I don't want to kill this set of pigs. Smithfield is telling me they've been marked blue as pigs that are disposal piglets who have no economic value and go into a landfill. And so he decides on one occasion, just this past November, I'm not going to kill these piglets anymore. I'm going to send them off somewhere else. And this is something his boss had done occasionally in the past, but not usually to other activists. He suspects maybe his boss had been selling these pigs to another farmer. But Brad says, okay, I'm going to do the same thing. And if it doesn't work, there are these advocates who've been reaching out to me because he'd made a Craigslist posting and asking me, why don't you just release them to us? And I'm going to do it. I'm just going to release them. And that's kind of what Brad did. He released 42 piglets who had never stepped outside, never been able to dig around in real dirt, never had any food beyond the horrific gruel filled with antibiotics and chemicals, including antibiotics like Carbadox. And, sometimes this feed is, their experiences in pig farms with the feed, because of all the chemicals and drugs in the feed, is actually so acidic and so toxic, it actually burns the piglets' digestive systems. The piglets with more sensitive digestive systems actually have like lacerations and burning injuries within their own insides. That's all they've eaten. And now these piglets are eating pumpkin and fruits and vegetables, these delicious foods they've never had before in their entire lives. And 42 of them, like one of the largest piglet rescues in the world, was triggered by a pig farm. I don't know if I've heard of a larger pig rescue, especially at a huge factory farm like Smithfield, that not only would save the lives of these 42 animals, but expose who these animals are, not what they are, but who they are. That these are living creatures who have feelings and have unique personalities. And each one of these 42 piglets is just a delightful individual in and of her himself. They're all special creatures. And when you see the photos and the videos, you see, one of them is very shy. The other is very friendly. The other loves to dig. The other hates digging and just likes lying in the dirt. And every single one of them is special and unique. And everyone in the world got to see these stories and hear these stories because of Brad's act of compassion. Now, Brad didn't even expect it would be that big of a deal. I mean, the main concern I think he had is, who are these activists? Maybe they're going to try and cause some other trouble. Brad can speak to himself. His main concern, he didn't think that anything would happen. He thought this is just a common sense, moral thing to do. I mean, these piglets have no value. I'm going to send them to this lady who, in Brad's experience, and he's shared this on the road trip, that these people loved animals more than anyone he'd ever seen in his life. And it was heartwarming for him to see them interact with these animals, pet them, touch them, care for them in a way every animal deserves to be cared for. Every human being deserves to be cared for. He never thought this beautiful, warm, compassionate experience could lead to severe prosecution and the most devastating consequences in my life. And that's what happened. That they charged Brad, they arrested him at work, they ultimately removed him from his home because his home was on a Smithfield farm, or on a farm that supplied to Smithfield. They made him persona non grata, basically unwelcome the entire community, because he was told that Smithfield had been going around in the local community basically telling people not to help him anyway, not even to pick him up from jail or offer him some bail money. And so Brad was isolated and devastated and destroyed until he followed up with us, and until some of the activists involved said, and this is because they'd come to the Animal Liberation Conference and they knew who I was, they knew we had a legal team, they knew we dealt with situations like this, and that we had helped other farmers and other activists who'd gone through similar scenarios, that they reach out to us. We put our legal team in touch with them. We've gotten him some lawyers who can now adequately defend him and paid off his bail money so he doesn't have to worry about going back to jail for this act of compassion. And now his story is going viral. We're seeing someone as prominent as Saul Elbine, a freelancer who's written for the New York Times, interested in his story. And I think there are three really important reasons his story is crucial, not just in the animal rights movement, but the future of life on this earth. And the first is his story is a story of power and repression. That more and more now, folks who don't have power and wealth are being crushed by folks who do have a lot of power and wealth. And this has nothing to do with the character of wealthy people. There are a lot of really charitable, remarkable, wealthy people in this nation, in this world. It has no more to do with the systems of power that are in place, that our democracy is sort of falling apart because those who are falling behind, whether because they don't have money, they don't have health care, they don't have jobs, or they're the wrong species, have no voice in our system at all. An example of this is Amazon and Facebook and Google. I mean, I love these companies in many ways. I use their services, but we have no power over them at all. And increasingly, these companies dictate the future of the planet and the future of our lives. If Facebook today decided they wanted to shut down our page because Mark Zuckerberg didn't like a post we made, they could shut it down with no consequences at all to Facebook. They wouldn't have to worry about it at all because they've signed contracts with everyone who uses a Facebook page saying, we can arbitrarily shut your Facebook page down at any time. And we suddenly lose completely our ability to communicate with 300,000 followers, and we have no due process. Because unlike the government putting us in jail or denying us our right to speech, we have no right to petition Facebook because Facebook is not a government entity. It's a corporation. Smithfield is the same way, right? Smithfield is a massive multi-billion-dollar corporation that supplies 1/3 of the pork in this nation. They feed so many people, frankly, not just in the United States, but around the world. But if your kid gets sick now in North Carolina and Smithfield has the political power in our current system to go to the legislature of the state of North Carolina and say, no, you're not allowed to sue us. I'm sorry. We're too big. We're too powerful. We've donated too many dollars to local politicians. And so they passed a law in North Carolina just a year and a half ago called HB 467 that immunizes all pig farms from litigation for nuisance liability. So if a pig farm pollutes the air and the water and your kids get sick, you can't sue Smithfield. There's no accountability, right? And Brad is an example of this because probably the most stark and disturbing example is when companies go after their own, when they destroy their own people. Brad was authorized by his boss to do this. Brad was doing something that had no economic consequences at all to the company. The only thing that was bad about Brad's action was the fact that he was speaking, and not even in a particularly aggressive way. The only speech he really offered the world was, I'd rather not kill these piglets, and I think it's good if piglets are safe. He wasn't trying to start some campaign against Smithfield to shut down the company or shut down factory farms. All he wanted to do was see these piglets off the sanctuary. He wanted not to have to kill animals, but to have a chance to save them. He wanted to be the pig farmer who could send his pigs to sanctuary instead of slaughter. That's it. That's a statement he made to the world. And for that statement, they brutally and savagely attacked him and tried to destroy his entire life, and they would have succeeded, if not for all of you, and if not for the people in the animal rights movement stepped up to support him and say, this is not okay. We're going to stand up for this guy. We're going to represent him in court and in the court of public opinion and say he didn't do something wrong. He did something that was profoundly good. And we're not going to allow Smithfield and the other corporations of the world to destroy him. Well, what this does, when people like Brad speak out, these insiders within the industry, is it destabilizes the narrative of repression the companies and the industries want to convey. They want to tell the world that animal rights activists are terrorists for saving animals. They want to tell the world that you are an extremist, that vegans are extremists for wanting to prevent piglets from being thumped over the skull over and over again. And Brad and his story destabilize that narrative because as an insider in the industry, he proves their story is nonsense. When even pig farmers are saying, I don't want to thump pigs. I'm sick and tired of crushing the skulls of baby pigs. I'm never going to do it again if I can avoid it. And I'd rather send these piglets to sanctuary than to a slaughterhouse or to a landfill. That shows the world, it shows the authorities, the court system, the juries, the prosecutors, that what they're saying is nonsense. We're not terrorist extremists. We're ordinary people, just have compassion. So that's the first point. It destabilizes the narrative of repression that not just big corporations in Animal Ag, but frankly, big corporations around the world are trying to convey. Second thing Brad's story shows us is that public opinion can and will be galvanized in support of the animal rights movement because it's not just animal rights activists who are supporting Brad. It's people like Saul Elbine. Again, Saul Elbine is classic meat eater. He's an environmentalist. He cares about the planet. He cares about animal welfare on some level, but he eats meat. He doesn't really care about it. He says, it's kind of extreme to be a vegetarian or vegan. But Saul Elbine's story is an example of how the public is galvanized by these stories too. Not only does it destabilize the prosecution, when the public sees people within the industry turning against it, becoming these so-called turncoats, what they say to themselves is, oh my gosh, if even the people who, frankly, I probably look down upon and say, those pig farm workers, they mistreat animals. They're in red states where people are bad on civil rights issues, bad on women's rights issues, and bad on animal rights issues. You got this guy who should be bad on all the issues, being good on animal rights issues and saying, no, I'm eating vegan. I'm saying Smithfield is a horrible company. That leaves the public in a very interesting spot where they say to themselves, wow, are all these rationalizations I've been making about why we have to eat animals and why we have to slaughter animals, if even a pig farmer is saying, no, those rationalizations don't hold up. I love vegan food. I don't want to slaughter animals. Then many people in the public will be changed and moved. And I think this story, I hope, will become one of the most powerful stories written about DXC. And I don't know when it's going to come out. It's probably going to be the next month or so when Saul finishes. It could be longer than that because the New York Times tends to be very, very slow. So, but here's the third and maybe most important point. And, we got the government prosecutions being destabilized. We have public opinion being galvanized with these stories. But there's a third issue that I think is maybe more important than the other two. All of them are important, obviously. And it's this, that when you have some people defecting against an oppressive industry, it encourages other people to do the same. Because I will tell you right now, having been outside of slaughterhouses and factory farms more times than I can count, Brad is not the only person who's deeply disturbed by what happens in factory farms and slaughterhouses who works in the industry. And many of them feel the same way that Brad did when he came out against this. Frankly, I think Smithfield made a big mistake. If they had not come after Brad so hard, he would have had options within his own community to find support. But other people who are in his situation, who have not yet been prosecuted, have not yet been punished as dissenters, feel they can't leave their own community. They can't turn against their own community. And what we have to show them is you're not turning against your own community. You are supporting your own community because there are deep intersections between the abuses of the workers and the farming community and the abuses of the animals and the environment. Some of the trivial ways in which this is true. The people who get sick from pig farms are not urban people like us yet. Although some of you may be rural people. I apologize for assuming all of you are urban people. I'm sure many of you are not urban people. We have lots of rural supporters in DXC, including Brad himself. But the people who get sick from the antibiotic-resistant bugs in factory farms are not people in San Francisco and Los Angeles and New York City and Chicago. They're people who live in rural North Carolina, in Franklin County, North Carolina, in Duplin County, North Carolina, in Transylvania County, North Carolina, where I'm being prosecuted. Because and there's scientific evidence that in the immediate surrounding area of a pig farm, the children in those local communities are 3 times as likely to get methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, this horrific infection that's antibiotic-resistant that literally eats these poor kids' skin. And 20 to 30,000 kids and other people with immune systems that are compromised die of MRSA already every year in the United States. And those people who die of this disease or suffer from the disease are in the surrounding area in pig farms. Another way this concentration of power affects workers. Brad was working sometimes 50, 60 hours a month, getting paid $14,000 a year. And Brad's told me stories about days off where he'd have a day off. And this is an example about how the workers themselves are just disposable commodities. They're just things for Smithfield to use. But even on days off for Brad, where he's working on the Smithfield farm, he's getting like almost less than minimum wage, slaving away inside the farm, being forced to do things he's morally uncomfortable with. There were days off, like on weekends, where something's going on his farm, and his boss literally charges up to his door, basically knocks his door down and says, you need to get in the farm right now. I'm going to fire you on the spot. And someone who has so little power, so little ability to have another job, who's got a kid, who's got a girlfriend he's trying to support, who can barely even pay the rent and pay for the food on his table every day, that threat is a dangerous threat. When your boss comes knocking on your trailer, even on a weekend, you've got to go to work. You've got no choice. And if you don't go to work, if you don't listen to your boss, you lose your job. You're thrown away by the industry, right? And so many farm workers have experiences like this. When I was in jail in Sonoma County, I met a slaughterhouse worker named Gabriel, who had exactly the same experiences that Brad had and left the industry. But many people feel like they can't leave the industry. And we need to show them that there is a better vision forward that we can build for all the animals of this earth. The humans, the non-human animals, the workers, the vegans, the non-vegans, all of us benefit from this transformation. And it's a world where we transform all these slaughterhouses and factory farms, make them sanctuaries, and build plant-based factories, just like the Impossible Foods plant that's 10 minutes away from where I live in Oakland. These beautiful buildings where they have clean food on the inside. They're growing meat from plants and soy and peas. The conditions inside are incredibly clean. There's no antibiotics and disease or feces. The workers are paid 3 or 4 times the amount that farm workers are paid because this technology is so efficient and it's so much cheaper to make meat from soy than it is from pigs or cows or chickens, that they can take all those cost savings and instead of sending to China, which is what Smithfield does, they can send it back into the communities that they're trying to invest in, right? There's so many benefits for the workers themselves. And we need to encourage and support more of these workers to come out. And if we do, I think more of them will come out of the woodworks and say, I don't want to be part of this. Anyways, so Brad, I've been talking everyone's ear off. It's been 18 minutes since I jumped on the call with you. But what do you think about that vision? And what do you think about helping us build that vision in North Carolina, talking to some of your friends in the pig farming industry, giving them a chance to talk to us and ask them, how would you feel about $25 an hour instead of $7 or $8? How would you feel about a job that was clean and beautiful and that didn't require you to hurt animals? How would you feel about eating meat that was 1/10 the cost of the current meat and 1/10 the risk to your children? Brad, what do you think? Brad, did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
What do you think of that vision?
Hey, remember the picture I sent you of the gray car?
Yes.
I'm driving that beast.
This is your cousin's car?
It's my niece's car.
It's your niece's car. And if I remember, there was a certain hat inside that car. What was the hat inside that car?
I'm wearing that some bitch too. I won't bullshit when I said it.
So the hat that was inside the car was a Smithfield hat. And Brad said, get that hat out of that car because this is his niece's hat and he doesn't want any more Smithfield hats in his car. But Brad, tell us, can you tell me a little bit about this vision we talked about of transforming the entire landscape of North Carolina? So all these farms that are currently exploiting animals can be transformed into sanctuaries and plant-based meat plants where we help animals, we pay people 4 times as much as they're currently being paid. We no longer devastate the local communities and the environment. What do you think about that vision and how do you think people in your community are going to respond to it? Brad, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, what do you think of that vision and how do you think the people in your community are going to respond to it when we start sharing it with them?
Do I know?
What do you think of that vision that we were talking about of a world where all the workers are well paid, the food's clean and healthy, and the animals are well cared for? How do you think the people in your community are going to respond to that vision?
I'm curious to know that myself.
Have you started talking to anyone about it yet?
Yeah, I've spoken to a few.
How have they responded?
Wayne's right here, matter of fact.
How you doing, Wayne? This is not me. He's not referring to me, obviously. I know I'm here. There's another Wayne. Wayne Thornton is Brad's stepbrother. Okay, I'm sorry, folks. The connection is not super good because we're over a data connection and Brad's in rural North Carolina, so it seems like it's cutting in and out a little bit. So, but Brad just said he doesn't know, but I'm already talking to people about this vision of a world where we no longer hurt the animals, we help them. And all the workers have better jobs than the jobs they're currently being given. So why don't we open things up for questions and conversation? I can go a little past 10 a.m. today. So I thought I'd speak a little bit longer. So if you want to unmute folks, Sahar, we can go ahead and unmute folks.
Okay, sure.
I'm
Everyone's
looking at some
allowed
of the
to
comments.
unmute themselves, but I can unmute everyone. It's going to be a lot of noise. A lot
Okay.
more.
So yeah, if anyone has any questions or comments or thoughts on anything that I shared with you, or frankly anything else.
Hey, Wayne.
Yeah.
How did Brad get in contact with Direct Action anywhere?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, Brad never heard of DXC. He'd never even heard of veganism before this all happened to him. Brad got in contact with us because there was an activist in the local community whose name is Erica, who had come to the ALC the prior year and had been following our stories and knew about all the relationships we've developed with slaughterhouses and farm workers. She knew about the friendship I struck up with Abdul, the slaughterhouse owner who had released a number of animals to us in Oakland. Knew about Rick Pittman and the release of 100 turkeys and thought, well, I mean, there's farm worker who has this very serious legal situation and was doing something to help animals. The group that I should reach out to is DXC, and she knew about us because she had been an attendee at the Animal Liberation Conference. And that's one of the really powerful things about these conferences, because it's really hard to know what to do in these incredibly difficult situations where powerful corporations are trying to crush you. But when you have an entire network of activists who have learned and gone through experiences and have the professionals and the expertise and the education to handle these situations, you know, you're going to reach out to them. And it's easier to reach out to people when you've made a personal connection or a personal relationship. And so the ALC has been crucial to us for that purpose. And I highly encourage all of you to come to the ALC as well, because if a situation arises for you, I mean, the fact that you're on this video conference is obviously incredibly helpful too, because you know me, you know all the folks on this call, like Sahar and all the other people who join these calls, and Nena and else. But the ALC, it can't be beat. You know, when you meet people in person, you shake their hand, you realize, okay, this person's got my back if they need me. And that's what happened with the activists in North Carolina. They realized they had someone at their back, which is DXC. And that means they had all of you at their back too, because we wouldn't be able to do these things. We wouldn't be able to, you know, support people like Brad and save animals like those piglets if not for the resources provided us by all of you. And now is the time for us to do that fundraising, because over the next few weeks until the end of ALC, everyone who, like you, becomes a member and steps up will generate a $100 bonus. And I should also add that any of you who decide to increase your monthly donation by $10 or more, you can just email Sahar, the finance team, and that counts as well. If anyone increases their monthly donation, monthly contribution as a member by $10 or more, we're getting a $100 from a matching donor. So that's how it all happened. I'm just looking at the chat, and I'm reading that Paula from Belgium is saying, I read that Amazon didn't pay dollars. They didn't pay any taxes at all. That's true. I think they didn't pay any corporate taxes at all. Because they have, and it's because you have this company that is literally one of the largest companies in the world, owned by the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, and they didn't pay a dime of taxes. And guess what? Someone like Brad Johnson is making $14,000 a year. He's probably paying like 12% of taxes because he's got to pay payroll tax. So the government's taking, you know, $2,000 of his money. Well, Amazon, the largest corporation in the world, or, you know, one of the top 5 largest corporations in the world, isn't paying a dime. You know, Smithfield is avoiding all sorts of taxes now that they're a Chinese company. You know, they're able to avoid lots of taxes, not sending their profits back to the United States. They can claim all their profits are going to China, and so they don't have to pay the corporate tax rate. So you and I are paying higher taxes in many cases, and Brad is paying higher taxes than a large corporation. I'm seeing Max saying, I was at the Meet the Victims action in BC, Canada on Sunday. Thank you for being there, Max. And, you know, we're going to hear more in a strategy call tomorrow among organizers about how that action unfolded.
Hey, Wayne.
Yeah, please.
Yes, hi. Now, first of all, I am very happy that you are supporting Brad, because this is something that is great to feel that people can actually become whistleblowers and have the support of the animal rights community, the movement, so they can actually. Well, it's good that they are not alone, and they can feel that we are going to support them in any case. No? So, well, thank you very much. And I just wanted to let Brad, I don't know if he can hear that. Thank you very much for saving those piglets, and I am very sorry for everything that happened to him. So, well.
That is on, and I hope that he hears it. And if he doesn't, I'll certainly pass it along, Paula. And you're right, supporting his whistleblowers is crucial. We don't support them. The next one that comes around is going to look at his face and say, heck no, am I doing that? Or no way am I doing that. On the other hand, if we have a New York Times article that talks about how Brad has recovered from this, that he's gone down a different path, he's got a better job, his family's in a good place, all the things that we need to happen are happening. And suddenly all these other farmers are saying, why am I not doing this? I should do this too. You know, I'm sick of this job. I'm sick of getting paid nothing. I'm sick of having Smithfield bully me all day, humiliate me, you know. So I'm seeing some other comments. Holland is suggesting that we post some of our stuff to our website in addition to Facebook and Twitter, because Holland is not on social media. I think that's a great idea. And one of our projects after the ALC is revamping our website and creating more regular content on that. So I hope that does happen. Mark is asking, I'm eager to learn more about the solo disruptions you were talking about yesterday. Also interested in the path to personhood. So I almost did a solo disruption yesterday because I was lost. Or if you follow the live stream I did yesterday on Facebook, I was supposed to be doing some outreach at what's called First Fridays in Oakland. But I got lost in downtown Oakland. Downtown Oakland is a busy place with lots of buildings and people. And, you know, since I was live streaming, I couldn't even really pull my phone out and try and find out where the heck I was supposed to go. I thought I'd parked right next to the outreach location. And I was wandering around and I thought, well, if I can't find my fellow outreachers, maybe I'll just do a solo disruption. A solo disruption, this is something that we did for the first time in, I think, 2014. And it was, the first one was called Disrupt Speciesism. And Priya Sahani was the one who did it first, and it went viral right after she did it. And the idea is this, that we're taught that we have to be silent, that we have to be polite, that we have to be almost timid about our veganism and animal rights, that if you go too far, you can't speak out because people look down on you or make you feel like you're doing something that's rude. And we need to overcome that. We just have to be more confident. And the best way to do that is just go right to the place where people are eating animals and speak our truth, no matter what people think of us. And Priya just went into a restaurant. Priya is this like elegant, beautiful woman who looks like she's in a fancy restaurant to eat there. So no one suspected she's in here to deliver a speech. So she just walks into this super fancy restaurant in Oakland with a sign that says, I think it says like animals' lives are right. Or maybe it says it's not food, it's violence. And she just starts speaking and starts saying, I love my dogs and cats at home. I love all animals, and I know you do too. And it's time for us to stop the violence against animals that's happening in the world. It's time for us to disrupt the speciesism that allows us to cuddle with our puppies at home every night and then support industries that brutalize piglets that are just as sensitive and just as feeling as our puppies. And the people in the restaurant are just like, oh my God, what the heck is going on? It's a hilarious video. You should watch it. And the restaurant owners are going, completely absurd. They're like running around and screaming and they're grabbing her and shoving her and they shove her out of the restaurant. But there's something really powerful of that simple truth, that there's violence against animals that's happening everywhere. But there's also something we can do about it. We can speak out, and we want to inspire and encourage other people to speak out, even when our voice shakes, and even when we feel scared to speak, that we're going to speak anyways. And that went viral, and I did a Disrupt Speciesism challenge in a steakhouse in Baltimore and got shoved out of a Ruth Chris. They dragged me out and started yelling racial epithets at me and yelling, don't you know the Chinese eat dogs? And that video went viral too. We haven't really done this as much recently, but it's still a powerful action. And at DXC, we just believe that anyone who's speaking their truth to the world, anyone who's speaking the animal's truth, it's not our truth, it's the animal's truth ultimately, because it's happening to them. Whether we speak it or not, it's happening to them. We want to support them and encourage them and develop them and build a powerful and beautiful grassroots movement that people around the world feel is supporting them and getting out there and getting active for animals. Yeah, Mark, you're making me think. I haven't done this in, many months. Like, people used to see me do this all the time. I just walk into Whole Foods and give a little speech, or, I'd see a steakhouse and I give a little presentation and say, hey, folks, just, your friendly neighborhood animal rights activist here to disrupt speciesism a little bit. And, it's really shocking. People always get super angry and sometimes they attack you and physically assault you. But then there are also some people who are just shocked into sympathy. Like, here's an example of this. I did a disruption in North Carolina, actually, in Asheville at a steakhouse. And one of the most violent reactions I got, there was this guy who was sitting down yelling like, bacon, 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 get out of here, you damn hippie. And he was like violent. I thought he was going to throw a cup at me. And after I was done with my speak out, this was actually not a solo disruption. There were a couple other people there with me in North Carolina. But after I'm finished with my speak out, everyone else leaves. And this guy still yelling at me. And I say to him, hey, buddy, how you doing? Like, I hear that you have a concern. Sounds like you're upset about what I'm saying, and I'm wondering if you're willing to talk to me. And he was just like, what? Like, he doesn't know what to do. People don't know what to do when they're trolling you, and you just go up to them and you're really nice. You say like, yeah, I'd really like to hear what you're saying. Help me understand your perspective on this. And he was like, and I said, well, you can take a seat. You got an empty seat at your table. And he's having this is a double date, so it was incredibly awkward for me to do this, but I did it anyways because I figured this guy's trolling me. I'm entitled to say at least something to him. And so he's got a double date. It's him and his date and this other guy on a date. And there's an empty chair. There's actually two empty chairs. And he says, all right, take the seat. And we start talking. And I find out this guy actually has a dog at home he loves dearly. And he thinks of himself as someone who cares about animals, which is one of the reasons he's at this fancy restaurant buying humane meat in Asheville. And he says to me, I agree with your cause. I just don't like the way you're doing this. And I said, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that feedback. And let me know what we can do differently. And he told me, I didn't like the fact you disrupted our dinner. I didn't like the fact that you were yelling and chanting and all these things. But on the other hand, I do appreciate your passion. And now that I think about it, the only reason I'm even having this conversation with you is because I was upset about what you were saying. I was upset that you seemed to be challenging me and making me feel bad about this. And so now I'm kind of glad. And we're talking to each other and sharing our backgrounds. And he offers to buy me some vegan food at this restaurant. Says, can I buy you something? I'm like, no, don't worry about it. I'm just here to talk. You don't have to buy me anything. And then when the cops come, because the restaurant had called the police, and the restaurant's still looking at me, sitting at this table, I just done a speak out inside this restaurant. Now I'm sitting with one of the patrons who's having a steak right next to me. And actually, that might have been a violation of the Liberation Pledge, so don't tell anyone. I think there's an exception when you sit down with a troll at a restaurant who just yelled at you and called the police on you. You can sit down with them temporarily and still comply with the Liberation Pledge. But the police come in and they come and like basically are threatening to arrest me and about to like haul me off. And the guy who had been yelling bacon and trolling us at the protest tells the police, leave this guy alone. He's with me. And he tells the restaurant owner, you don't touch this guy. He's with me. And we're hanging out and we're having a good time. And the police just leave. And I'm stuck in this restaurant, right? And that's the power of direct action. Like, people think of disruption as a confrontational tool, and it is a confrontational tool. But they think of it as a divisive and judgmental tool, and it's not. If it's done the way it should be done. I'm not saying that everyone has to do it this way, and there's a skill to it. There's an art to it, right? When you're emotional and angry and you're yelling, it's hard to like dial it back down and have a conversation with someone. But if you have that skill and the composure, you can take the disruption and transform it into connection, right? And that's our ultimate goal. What's happened, and this is what Martin Luther King Jr. said in the 1950s and 60s, that the problem here is not that we're angry at people and we don't like the people of America. Far from it. We love the people of America. We believe in the people of America. The problem is we're not able to have a conversation with the people of America. We're being shut down by the government, by traditions, by the traps in people's own minds about segregation, and we're not able to elicit a real dialogue. And we have to take direct action to force a conversation. And once we have that conversation, people realize they support us. We're on the same team here. Like, the end of segregation, the end of the oppression of women, the end of the oppression of animals benefits all of us. But we need to have that conversation. We can't have that conversation if everyone's shut down and feeling ashamed and humiliated and cognitively dissonant about the costs, right? And the way we overcome that, the way we generate the potential energy, it's almost like you're lighting a nonviolent fire, right? The way you do that is by striking the match. And again, I'm not saying at all that we strike any matches. Arson is obviously a bad thing for any FBI agents who are listening to this call. It's metaphorical fire. No animal rights activists are starting any fires. If you're listening to this call, don't start a fire. It's a bad tactic. It's one of the few tactics I'm not supportive of in the animal rights. But when we disrupt, it's like we're striking a match that can light a fire for progress, for healing and peace. Anyways, so thanks for reminding me of that, Mark. And maybe Sahar, when you send this email out, you can even share a couple of those original videos. Sahar, have you seen these videos of me like getting shoved out of a steakhouse?
I've seen a few, but
Okay.
yeah, it's been a while. So
Yeah, this is the original Disrupt Speciesism Challenge. It's great.
yeah.
They like assault my camera person. They threaten to beat him up. They yell all these racial epithets at me. And I mean, I'm smiling about it. It's horrible stuff, but this is the point. The point is, when you disrupt, you unearth all the tensions and prejudices and oppressions in our society and help us have a real conversation about it. And after that action, even meat eaters are watching me getting shoved out of a steakhouse, my cameraman getting assaulted, this guy yelling, like, F the Chinese, you guys all eat dogs. And they have to ask themselves, whose side do I want to be on? Do you want to be on the side of the guy who just gave a pretty good speech inside of a steakhouse, or the guy who's yelling racial epithets at the Chinese? I mean, choose which side you want to be on.
Wayne,
Yes.
it's Carol here.
Hey, Carol, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I have a question. I wanted to know how you feel about this, because maybe you think it's something that we shouldn't be doing right now, but I was a language teacher, and language is very important to me. And going through the women's movement, I saw how, assumptions that everything is male and him and whatever. So to me, language is very important. And I feel very radicalized that I don't want to use euphemisms anymore. To me, there's no such thing as pork or bacon or meat. There's flesh ripped from the bodies of non-human species who are exploited and tortured. Now, that's a very long word for meat, but I really, when I talk to people who are not vegan and I say these things, they get very upset with me. And I say, well, I get upset when you say euphemisms for something like that. So is this more disruptive and something more that should be done in like 10 years, or what do you think?
It's a great question. And the first thing to say is, anyone who says confidently they understand the optimal messaging strategy, 100% is just lying to you. Nobody knows exactly the right answers, and different messages have worked in different movements. Second thing I want to say before I get into the substance is, the most important thing we do know from the evidence on social movements is you got to speak out. You got to speak out in whatever way is true to you. And so what I tell people is, the most important thing is you find a message you're comfortable with, that you believe in. And if you're doing that, you're helping the movement, probably. And if you're not, you're not, And there are many ways to speak out. Even supporting DXC or other animal rights groups financially is a way to speak out. And so all of you are speaking out just by virtue of being members. But on the substance, there are a lot of euphemisms, and they're deadly euphemisms, literally deadly euphemisms. So I do think in the long term, transforming our language is going to be necessary, just as our language was transformed in the civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement, all these movements did transform the way people thought and also the words with which they express. So things that I think would make me pause a bit about using language that's upsetting to other folks. The first is if we use language that's intentionally upsetting. So, for example, if you say, that's not bacon, that's the flesh of a baby animal you tortured and killed, right?
But that's true.
It is true. It is true in many ways. But what that will do is make them see themselves as an adversary of the movement, as opposed to a potential ally. And I'm not saying some people shouldn't be villains. You know, I'm on records of saying that I think one of the reasons that the civil rights movement was so effective was they found a good villain, Bull Connor, right? This hulking police commissioner, public commissioner, who decided to send police dogs and fire hoses after kids in Birmingham. It was really effective for them to find the right villain. We don't ever want everyone to be the villain. We want most people to be our allies and to find the right villains, the people who have power, who have shown a propensity towards violence, who have no capacity to empathize with the cause at all and transition towards becoming better people on this planet. And for the rest of folks, I think at least initially, my view is the best framing is to find a framing that's going to empower them to feel they're already on board with our mission and our movement. So instead of saying, here's a piglet who was killed and tortured by your insensitive and monstrous actions and your lack of empathy, you know, maybe say something like, here's a piglet that you can help us save. You know, that let me take you to a sanctuary and let me tell you about the great world we can create together. And I believe that you think that this piglet, when I show you this piglet, is a creature deserving of respect. So let's do it together. You know, and so when I do the liberation flags, for example, many of you know that I don't eat at any tables where there's flesh present, with the exception of trolls who are yelling bacon at me, I guess. I do sit at their tables occasionally just to hang out and find out what they're thinking. And I guess I don't eat with them. So that actually, no, it's not a violation of liberation flags because I didn't eat with him. He offered me food, but I didn't eat with him. So I just sat there and talked to him. But when you have people like that, you know, and you realize there's so many people who do have this deep-seated anger, frankly, even at themselves, and anger at the system that they have not unearthed and have not been able to unpackage. You know, our goal should be to bring them in and let them kind of grow and bloom like a seed that's sprouting into this beautiful plant, and recognizing, and people can tell when you go into a conversation just thinking, this person is a good person who, frankly, probably has some things to teach me. First of all, you should be humble enough to accept that they have something to teach you. But secondly, they might be in a bad place now where they're supporting these violent industries, but I have so much hope and optimism in my conversation with them that they are like this beautiful seed that's going to sprout into this flower from movement. At any point, they could become an animal rights activist. And when you go into these conversations with that level of optimism and hope for these people, they can see it. They can see it in you. And then they want to support you too. So I don't have specific thoughts on the exact language. I do think our language should always be, even when we're transforming our language, it should always be positive and optimistic while confronting the system, drawing in that individual and helping them see the monstrosity of the system. You know, just saying things like, I think it's okay to say things like, and I mean, first of all, I think it's okay to say anything. Say whatever your truth is. But I think it's effective to say, like, did you know baby pigs are thumped to death on concrete? And that even pig farmers are opposed to this, that even people working in the industry, in some cases, are so opposed to this, they're getting prosecuted by Smithfield for doing it because they refuse to do it and they'd rather send pigs to sanctuary. And then again, that makes people think like, wow, there are bad things happening. They're so bad even pig farmers are against this. Maybe I should be against this too. So instead of confronting that individual, confront the system and draw them in to the challenge we're trying to collectively make to the system. Second thing I'm going to say about that is, while it's hard to do because we always are deeply hurt and moved and sensitive to the suffering of animals and the insensitivity of the people around us to the suffering of animals, I think it's absolutely crucial to never make it about yourself. You know, even when, I know a lot of people use this tactic, they say, well, even if you don't respect the animals, the Liberation Pledge, I'm showing you this sport because it says liberation and this stands for the Liberation Pledge. Not just because I have a fancy bracelet. I'm not just like showing you my, what do you call it, bling? Is that what kids call it now? Like, is this bling? Does anyone know? I think it's bling. So I'm not just trying to show you my bling. There's a reason I keep showing you this bracelet. It stands for the Liberation Pledge. But a lot of people, when they do the Liberation Pledge, I think you can do this. I'm not saying don't do this at all. And maybe you do this if it's the only way you can be effective. A lot of people, when they talk about the Liberation Pledge, they say, well, maybe you don't care about the animals, you care about me. You know, my feelings are being hurt by you eating animals. And I honestly recommend you not do that, because I think that makes it about us. And I think that shifts the dialogue away from where we want it to be, which is what's happening to the animals, what's happening to ordinary people everywhere who are next to factory farms. It takes us away from those spaces into like almost an inner family dispute or an inner friendship dispute. And again, I think it's okay to do this to some extent if you have to just maintain your emotional safety. But otherwise, I wouldn't get into the fact that you're upset, because the more you talk about how you're upset, the more they're going to think like, okay, this is just like a personal thing. This has nothing to do with a broader systemic political problem. This just has to do with my overly sensitive niece, or my overly sensitive mom, or my, kind of unusually empathetic brother. He just has these intense feelings. He's a little bit weird. He's vegan, and that's not for me, right? We want to make it for you, for everyone. It's not just about my sensitivities. It's about everyone's collective sense that there's something deeply troubling happening in our food system in our society today, including among pig farmers, but especially with the animals. And for the animals themselves, they have no choice in this, whether we're sensitive or not. They're being boiled alive and stripped to pieces, right? So talking about that in a way that shows people how they're against it is probably the most effective strategy in talking to our friends and family. Does that help, Carol?
It does help, but I have people say that, I'm not stupid, I'm educated. I just don't want to think about these things because I just love meat and bacon too much.
Yeah.
So, they know they don't want to watch the movie Aliens or whatever, know. But what I think would be a good idea, if you would really have like a little course one day with like other people in your group doing like mock conversations, so we could really learn.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand your suggestions, but I really need to see something live. So if you could do little mock things.
Yeah, so here's what we'll do. Sahar, in addition to sending some of the Disrupt Speciesism challenges, maybe we can share with our members just the outreach conversations I had yesterday, because I thought yesterday, I had 100% conversations with people in Oakland yesterday, like literally 100%. Every single person I talked to, they're all down. They're like, yeah, veganism, animal rights, yeah, this makes sense. Including people initially were saying, but I eat humane meat, or I like eating meat. And it's easy to turn people, in my experience, as long as we appeal to their better angels. And yeah, I think you're right. Listening to some of those conversations and even practicing some of those conversations can be helpful. So Sahar, maybe you can send that out too, this outreach conversation. I got to apologize. The first 15 minutes of that is me running around in Oakland, super exhausted and trying to figure out where the heck I am. So the first 15 minutes are just a little amusing. Wayne lost in Oakland. And then, no, actually, that's right. I didn't get to the outreach table, but I started having outreach conversations with random people on the street because I realized I was lost. So I thought, well, why don't I just do outreach in a random place? So it's not that bad, but the first 15 minutes are not as interesting as the last 30 minutes or so. So we should share that live stream and give people a chance to listen and honestly give me feedback, because I'm not perfect at this, I think Earthlings Ed, James Aspie are amazingly good at these conversations too. So watch their live streams and videos too, because they do a really good job. I have a different style. My style is usually to get people to see animal rights as a political movement and to try to get people to become activists. My main ask for people is usually not to be vegan. I usually talk about it. And I did talk about it yesterday, but my main ask is usually sign a petition, come to a protest, come to a rally. We're going to ban fur in California. We need your help. These dogs and cats, they're desperate and they need you. They need you right now. Sign this petition. It's such a small thing for you to do. You can do it and help us save these dogs and cats who are being brutalized. And most people do it. I was there for 30 minutes and I signed 5 people up, had 10 great conversations. Okay, seeing another question by Paula. The Liberation Pledge, but the Liberation Pledge does not divide us between us and them. How can we become an example of what we can eat as vegans if we separate from meat eaters? We need to initiate dialogue. It's a great question. And what I'll say is this, I think everything in life, we should not be dogmatic about anything in life, other than maybe veganism. We should not be eating animals and anti-speciesism, even more than anti-speciesism. But the Liberation Pledge, I think people should take the pledge only if it helps them have more conversations with people who eat animals about what's happening to animals. And I think for most people, they find out this is true. Because most people, when they're eating with people or eating flesh, they silence themselves. They don't want to say anything. And if they do start saying something, the conversation goes the way Carol's conversation goes. It immediately gets judgmental, defensive. People get mad at you, you get mad at them. And then before you know it, you're walking out of the restaurant, and no one's paid the bill, and the restaurant's angry, you're angry. Everyone's angry. The animals are still dead. Nothing is helped by it at all. You just ate with someone who's eating steak, and everything is messed up because you tried to have a conversation and it was an utter failure, right? Here's what the Liberation Pledge does. It allows you to have that conversation about animal rights and have the person already feel like they're on your side because they're eating vegan or vegetarian at that table, right? They're already vegan. They're already on your side. And so instead of having a defensive conversation, you have a conversation about how you are awesome. Like, here's these things that are happening to animals, and you are part of the change. And I'm so grateful because you are just a complete badass, right? And the tenor of that conversation changes. Instead of getting all defensive and saying, oh, I want to eat my meat, they say, hey, yeah, you're right. I am awesome. Like, I totally did something pretty cool today. I am with you, right? So it's such a positive conversation. And then having one conversation like that over a vegan meal can transform your entire relationship. Like with Saul, like Saul is someone, I would not necessarily have confronted him about eating animals, honestly. He's a journalist. He's powerful, and he could write terrible things about us and say, Wayne is a complete jerk. He's a monster, and so on. But the fact that we're able to eat at a vegan table together, that I brought him to a vegan restaurant, and that I took the Liberation Pledge, and I've told Saul, if you eat with me, let's eat vegan. And I'm sorry, I'm happy to buy you a meal. Like, it's not a problem with you, or, I'm not trying to impose something on you. In fact, I just want to get to a place where I can fulfill my commitments to my community and the animals I care about. It has nothing to do with judging or shaming you at all, directly. And lo and behold, he eats vegan the entire week, right? All because he had one vegan meal with me. That's the power of the pledge. And that's why I think the pledge, if it's done well, is not a tool of division. It doesn't divide people. It brings people together. It brings people together around the values they really care about. So actually, there's one other thing I wanted to share, because this is the last member call before ALC, and that is that DXC is on the front page of Activist Facts, which is a website devoted to destroying activist movements. It's a front group for the meat and dairy industries. And we've now become, I think, by the industry's own admission, the most dangerous animal rights organization in America. And as the ALC approaches, and we have these 1,000 people come out, including luminaries like Glenn Greenwald, Amy Goodman, we have some legislators in California who we're hoping will come, we can expect their efforts to destroy us to ramp up. So not only are they going to go after people like Brad, and not only are they going to go after people in public and open ways, frankly, the most dangerous ways they're going to come after us is through rumor and innuendo, through infiltration, through efforts to destroy the reputations of activists. And I think we have to be prepared for this. So if you haven't checked it out, go check out the Activist Facts website right now. We're on their front page. They're talking about us as a cult, making up all sorts of allegations about sexual harassment and racism within the movement, not pointing out that, majority of DXC leadership historically has been people of color. It's like unusually in the animal rights movement. It'd be pretty ironic if the leadership of DXC that are ourselves people of color were all secretly racist working with the KKK. But while these allegations on the face are absurd, the industry knows that this is their best hope to destroy us. They can't fight with us out in the open. They have to fight with us in the dark. This is why they passed the ag laws. This is why they work in the darkness and in the cover of night to smear our reputations. And I think we have to prepare for that, because the greatest risk to the movement and the greatest risk to the ALC and what DXC is trying to achieve in the next couple of years is conflict and infight. That if we fight with each other, we have good disagreements. Like Carol and I just had a little bit of a disagreement where Carol, maybe felt like, I think we should be pushing a little hard. We should be a little more aggressive. And she might be right. I might be wrong about that. But we had a healthy disagreement. Carol did a great job of raising her perspective, saying, I don't know, maybe we should be going after people because language is important. And I hope, Carol, you feel like I did a good job of hearing you out and listening to your concern and saying, yeah, maybe that's right. And here are my reasons for thinking, I should do things the way I do them. That's got to be the path forward. When we have disagreements, we resolve them compassionate. And when we disagree, but we commit to still work together, frankly, even work in parallel to build a better movement for animals. And if we can't do that, the entire movement's going to fall apart. Because Martin Luther King Jr. said in 1963 when he was marching in Birmingham, and everyone thought your main fight is with Bull Connor. It was. He was fighting against the forces of racism, white supremacy that were killing people on the streets. But when he asked, what does your work consist of? He said, like 70-80% of my time is spent on just controlling fighting within the movement. That people fight each other, they're angry at each other, they have these very strong beliefs about each other that they can't overcome. And if we can't overcome that, there's no way we can go after segregation. And the same is true of animal rights today. We've got to work together. And when the FBI was trying to destroy the civil rights in the 1960s, they had two main objectives. One was undermine coalitions, prevent animal rights groups from working together, prevent things like the Animal Liberation Conference from happening, where all these animal rights groups come together, we learn from each other, we see each other face to face, we shake each other's hands, we cry and hug each other when we rescue animals together. The second thing they try to do is tarnish the reputations of leadership. They knew if they could undermine the moral credibility, the moral authority of the leadership, then the entire movement would fall apart. And that's what they're going to try and do with us. So expect them to call us terrorists, expect them to call us extremists and criminals, expect them to say far worse things about us, that we tolerate sexual harassment, that we're racist, that we abuse our volunteers and do all sorts of terrible things to the people in the movement. And if you have questions about any of that, reach out to us. It's not a problem to reach out to leadership. We're very transparent about everything because we work in the daylight while they work in the night. But they know that if they can create fear and distrust in the movement, then the entire movement falls apart. So I'm going to expect things like this to happen the next month because last year, right before the ALC, they came out with the prosecutions in Utah and 2 separate felony prosecutions that alleged we were terrorists and criminals and cult leaders. And, you know, the ALC is coming up again. This is the time where they're trying to scare people and sow distrust in the movement. You can expect it to happen again this month. So if it doesn't happen, it'll surprise me. But in the next few weeks, just be prepared for that to come down and prepared for a good response from us because we will respond effectively, just as we did last year. Okay, it is 10:30, so it's half an hour longer than I expected this to go. But again, so much gratitude and appreciation to all of you for your support. Please, again, come to the ALC if you're able to. It's the end of May. I would love to see all of you. My trial has been set in Utah from November 20th, 21st, and 22nd. If I lose that trial, good chance I'm in jail for a little while, so you might not see me at the next ALC. So come this year so I can hang out and say hello to all of you and express my gratitude in person. And the other thing is, if you know someone who is able or willing to either become a member or increase their membership by $10 a month, so you can just do it 1 month. So you can increase your membership by $10 one time this month, and we get $100. And we will only get that $100 if we make this happen. So you can offer $10, get us $100. You can always ask the finance team to reduce your contribution in future months if your finances get tight. But ask your friends, your family members, even if they chip in a couple dollars a month. You can say like, hey, I'll pay your membership the first month. Let me just give you $5, become a member. You're going to hear about all this amazing animal rights activists. You'll learn more about veganism, and you'll generate $100 to animal rescue. What could be better than that? So if you can, we're asking all of you to chip in whatever you can and ask your friends and family members to chip in if you can. Because now is the time we need to support. If we're going to tell more stories like Brad, if we're going to support activists like the activists in Vancouver, the activists in Mexico City who are getting arrested and beaten up for saving animals from hell, we need financial support, and now is the time to do it. All right? All right, well, thank you all very much. It was another great call. I need to shut this down because people are coming into the meetup. You can see some people are trickling in to the meetup at the Berkeley Animal Rights Center. You know, Tanya is here.
Thank you.
Christina's here. But I wish you could all be here in person. If you can't, I'll see you next month, hopefully.
Thank you for being you.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.